Now, in the next 2 pages of Lesson 21, I've written down step-by-step directions for graphing a line using slope and y-intercept. When you're doing the problems, when you're working problems like this, you can follow these step-by-step directions. Let's walk through it. First, we look at the slope, the linear equation that we have, and it is in y-intercept form. It's y is equal to 2/3 x plus 1. Now, the requirement for graphing using slope and y-intercept is it has to be in slope-intercept form. The equation has to be solved for y. So we have to identify certain things in this line. First, we have to say the slope is the coefficient of the x term, so the slope is going to be 2/3. The y-intercept, or b, is going to equal 0, 1. Those are the 2 things we need in order to graph the line. Remember how we got those from the last lesson? We know that this is plus b, and that's the y component of the y-intercept, and the x part is always 0. So first, step 1, you find the y-intercept. We know the y-intercept is 0, 1, and we place it on the graph. In step 1, you can see how the y-intercept has been graphed. In step number 2, you want to put your pen or your pencil on that y-intercept, and you want to follow the slope to the next point on the line. Now, slope is always written rise over run, or change in y over change in x. So it's always going to be rise, which is y, over x. So what we're going to do is we're going to go either up or down, depending on whether it is positive or negative, and then we're always going to move to the right for x. And if you keep your negative in the numerator, if you have a negative of a fraction, then you'll always be able to do this just going up or down and then always to the right. So in this case, we're going to start from the point where the y-intercept was, and we're going to go up 2 points, 2 spaces, 1, 2, and then we're going to go over 1, 2, 3 spaces. This is the next point that we come to. And if we counted off the spaces, we'd understand, or we could see that that's the point. I believe it's 3, 3 is our second point. Third, we're just going to draw the line. All we have to have is 2 points to graph a line. You might want to take and check another point just to make sure you're on the right track, but 2 points will graph your line. Slope-intercept form is one of the easiest ways to do it. Just remember, keep your negative, if you have it, in the numerator. In other words, if I had a negative 2/3 x, I would say I would go down 2 when I graphed that slope, and I would go to the right 3. I would always keep the negative in the numerator. So I'm either going to go up or down first, and then I'm always going to go to the right for the denominator. Now this is a good example. This problem is a really good example of what happens when you have a negative slope. Here's our equation. Here's our linear equation. Y is equal to negative 2x plus 1. First, I want you to see if you can identify the slope. The coefficient of x is a negative 2. Now, it's not a fraction, and when I'm graphing using slope-intercept, I always need a fraction, so I know whether to go up or down, and then I know I always go to the right for the bottom. So I'll just put it over the number 1. This one tells me to go negative 2, so I'm going to go down 2, and then to the right 1. So let's take a look at the slope-intercept. Here it is. B is going to equal 0, because it always starts with 0, and whatever that last number is, it's going to be a 1. So I know where to begin. I begin with 0, 1. When I find 0, 1 on my graph, it's found in this example. Look at step 2. You start from 0, 1, and you're going to follow your slope. You're going to go down 2 spaces and to the right 1 space. This is your second point. It looks like it's going to be a 1, negative 1. Next, I would draw a line through both of those, and I'll note that it has a negative slope. Well, that's a good thing, because look back up here at my equation. A negative 2 slope is a negative slope, so it should be a downhill line. Now, I've given you some points to remember at the bottom. You can graph a line if you have the y-intercept and the slope. You first find the y-intercept, and then you find the second point by using the slope. You either go up or down the number of spaces in the numerator, and then you go over to the right the number of spaces in the denominator. That's if you keep your negative always. If you have a negative, you keep it in the numerator. It'll never be in the denominator. And finally, you just draw the line. This page gives you some practice in graphing using slope and y-intercept. Please refer to the reminders on the page before so you know what you're doing. You're going to start by finding the y-intercept, and then you're going to use the slope in order to graph the line. When I look at this problem, first problem, line number 1, I recognize that my slope is going to be a negative 1 over 4. Remember, I'm going to keep the negative in the numerator, so that I go down, and I'll just write that down here. I'm going to go down 1, and then I'm going to always go to the right for the bottom number. So I'm going to go down 1, right 4 for my second point. But where's my first point? Well, my first point, y-intercept is 2. That's B. The point is 0, 2. So if I find 0, 2, here's my y-intercept. And next I'm looking for, from that point, I will move down 1 and to the right 1, 2, 3, 4 for my second point. What point is that? Well, I'd have to count the x values. I went over 4 for x and up 1 for y. So if I count it off, I can count and find out that that really is 0.41. Next, I'll just draw a line through both of those points. And my line looks like this. It does have a downhill slope, and it should, because my slope is negative. So that's sort of a way I can check myself. For example number 2, you should have found that your slope was really 1. Well, let's make it 1 over 1. So we know we're going to go up 1, and we know we're going to go right 1 every time we make a move. What's our y-intercept? Our starting point is going to be 0, negative 3. How did I get that? Well, remember, that's the y-coordinate of the y-intercept, and the x-coordinate is always 0. So I want to start at 0, negative 3. I'm going to start at 0, 1, 2, and 3. Here it is, 0, negative 3. And to get to my next point, all I have to do is go up 1 and right 1. So from the 0, negative 3, I go up 1 and right 1. Here's my next point. Well, it's really pretty close together there, but I can still draw a line. Let's see if I can identify where it is. It is on the x-axis. It's over 1 from the center, and it goes down a negative 2 in the y direction. So it's 1, negative 2 is what the point is. I can label it. How does this look when I draw it? There's my line, a positive slope. And you can see this does have a positive slope. Example number 3, or line number 3, it is solved for y, so we have the slope, which is the coefficient of x. It's going to be 2. I'm going to write it as a fraction, 2 over 1. So I'm going to go up 2 to the right 1. Now, the y-intercept is 0, negative 1. How did I find that? Remember, the negative 1 is all I need because the x-coordinate is always 0. So I find that point first, 0, negative 1, and there it is. And then I'm going to go in a positive 2 direction, 1, 2, up 2, and to the right 1. There's my next point. That point looks like 1, 1. You can find a third point if you wanted to. You just keep on walking up from that point. In other words, I would go up another 2 and over 1. There's my next point. It is 2, 3, I believe. Let's draw our line. It should go through all 3 of those since we found 3 of them. And it has a positive slope. Positive 2 slope is what we have.